Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Give Me God of War walkthrough, and we are between the realms. So this is probably the most difficult sequence of fights in the game. The first one is a joke if you use the strategy I'm doing here. All you do is put your back in a corner, hold the blade throw button, and spam R2. You do not have to time this. You do not have to react to any of this. You just keep a constant hitbox in front of you, and if you're lucky, you will not get hit. I did this on my first attempt at recording, so I didn't have any, like, oh, I got hit a few times and it finally worked, trial and error. This was just a strategy that I had an idea to try, and it worked. And it inspired me to use this strategy on every other Brood fight before this, but of course I'd already recorded them, and they were not as clean as this. But this is easily the dirtiest, safest strategy for this. So enjoy, and save your resources for the next one. Because there is, I think it's 4 phases. The first one is a shit ton of broods. The second phase is a bunch of the hell enemies, a whole host. There's a shield guy, there's a couple of the shadows, there's the Viken, like, larger dude with the maces and everything, and they all level up, and there's tons of them, and it's a nightmare. And then after that there are the 2 bosses, the B-boss men, and then finally you have, I think it's a troll and ogre, and maybe some nightmares. So there's a decent chunk of encounters coming up. Right now there's only 2 guys left. I could 100% run to them and kill them, but I'm committing to my cheesy strategy of just sitting in this corner. And now I'm moving out to get the business done. You don't have to keep using the same move. I just think there's a purity in shitting on an enemy that can be very dangerous with a nice cheesy move. So there you go, enemies down. Checkpoint just there. Now the second phase begins. So this is a tough one. I don't like this phase. I think this is actually the worst phase. Oh no, sorry, this is the hardest phase. I didn't realise this was the second phase. So this is the hardest enemy fight in the game. It's 2 of these knobheads with a lot of HP. And my strategy is very simple. I'm going to completely destroy them using the amulet. I'm going to bait the 2 swings that they do, this move, and I'm going to punish it by doing the same move every time. I'm going to do combos with R1 and R2 on the first hit. I'm going to duck the second hit coming out of the slow motion, and then I'm going to execute them with the executioner's move. And when the nightmare turns up, I'm going to use the ability with the boy to try and stun the nightmare, and then I'm going to focus on killing the nightmares. Once the nightmares are dead, I can finish off the final one of these fellas. And 1, 2, 3, dodge. You can also do 1, 2, 3 here, and then execution charge him for maximum damage. And that's about as much damage as you can get from him. That right there is a good opportunity to get another executioner's cleave, but I fucked up the timing. And then here is the punish on the projectile. But if you watched my boss fight against this enemy, you know exactly what I'm kind of going to do. The only difference is the optimization of the attacks on the double hitter. Because I got to the point where I'd figured out you could do, you know, R1, R2, R2, R1, dodge again, R2, R2, executioner's cleave, and get incredible damage on him. Which I'm hoping you're going to get to see some instances of. That right there is a strategy to stop the charge if you don't like it. You can throw Tears Revenge at it, really effective. Whenever he jumps in the air, he always goes behind you, and here is the slam because he's low life. He will do this 3 times. They always do it 3 times. Unless you interrupt them by attacking them, of course. If you can attack them afterwards, you'll stop them from doing the loop. And that was weird, did you see that? He dodged out of it, which is bizarre. And then I beat him with a rolling backwards attack, which I'd just purchased and I immediately regretted because I nearly fucked that up. But that is a very difficult fight, guys. If you're having trouble with it, it's 100% understandable because it's a hard fight. They didn't need to add nightmares to it. They didn't need to make the audio telegraph so bad. They didn't need for everything they do to blind you. They didn't need to make that enemy shit projectiles. Like, why the hell does he shit landmines that blind you on every backdash he does? It's so strange how that enemy is designed. But we did it. You can do it. Hopefully you can learn from my strategies and have no problems. And now you have... This is my least favourite wave. The other one is difficult. Difficult, taxing, very execution heavy. This one is just boring and annoying and full of dickheads. And that's a combination of difficulty that I find to be really hard for terrible reasons. And the problem here is the standard Hell Reavers do that running attack that's really fast. The big Hell guys do unblockables and unparryables and things like that. And then you have people with projectiles doing that crazy ground shockwave. And these three heavy fellas, once they all power up, they can all do the ground shockwave and they can all cause chaos. And then when you add in the shield guys who can break your guard and do that really quick shield bash that does chip damage, you have an encounter that's just rife with treachery. And my strategy for this is to 100% let Atreus do his thing, focus on all the small guys first, and then take out the three heavy guys as best I can. And the strategy that I came up with, outside of just fighting them normally, is whenever the boy distracts them, you can hit them with your runic attack. And if you have a grabbing runic attack like this, when you do it to them facing you, they will block it. But when you do it to the back of them or when they're distracted, you seem to get away with it. I don't know if the elite status has some kind of effect on that move, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. Right there, do a guard break and it didn't work, which is always fun to see. Don't know why that happened. I think the kid might have interrupted the animation or something. And be aware that when you're at range from these enemies, they will do that ground shockwave, so always be ready to block. Because if you don't, you're going to get shockwaved. Like just then, the shield bash move has iframes. And it's really, really good that it does. It's the reason why I like the move so much, because when you're charging forward, it gives you invincibility, so you can use it against attacks you don't like. It's kind of like activating Nimpo in Ninja Gaiden, seeing as I've spoke about that recently, or spamming grab in the old God of Wars. But I don't know when the iframes run out, so you need to be careful, because I have taken damage after it, but for the most, the sprint in it seems pretty good, and it's a good strategy to implement if you like the move, and I most certainly do. But this is a good move for range as well. Surprisingly how good the range is on that move. As Atreus gets their attention, and I hit them with the whip. But look how little damage we do to the level 6 guy, and now there's a level 7 guy. Come on now, game. Imagine if these guys were level 8. Imagine if we didn't have any upgrades. Imagine how ridiculous they'd be then. Whew. This would be a long fight. And will be a long fight. Because it's a long fight as it is. There you go, big slam into the face of that guy with the mace, and then he does his obligatory garbage. You could use Rage, I guess. You know, Rage is one of those universal equalizers, but you'll notice, outside of those dodgy platform moments, I've never really used Rage. There's been one or two encounters where I've got a nice sexy pattern for it, or fights that I didn't want to do and wanted to skip but didn't have a good way of doing it, so I used Rage. But outside of those, you know, it's been pretty much Rage free, so if you are having problems and you want to get rid of these guys, just use Rage. There's even a free refill. You can tell the game wants you to use it. See that? See that it was distracted? See that he's also an elite and it still let me do it? And did you see the splash damage it had? That's why that move is pretty cool for this encounter. I like that move a lot. I don't know if I'd upgraded it too much, but it's definitely cool. I could be throwing Tear's Revenge here and maximizing on my additional runic attacks, because even though they are hell, they will still take damage from that move. And it's similar to the axe buff. If I'd have had the axe buff, I could stun lock these enemies, but I don't have it, so I can't use it. And it's pretty frustrating, because I loved that move, and I missed it for my walkthrough, and it was the cheesiest strategy I found in the game. A buff that 100% stuns almost every enemy in the game except for Travelers. Why would you not use it, right? It's probably the cheesiest move in the game, because it's that good. It stuns bosses, it stuns every enemies. Ogres are a joke, trolls are a joke. And I fucking missed it, didn't I? I do like the lighting on this one from Muspelheim, but here is the troll. Sorry, no, this is the ogre. That's the ogre. He's level 5, green bar. And we're going to do the same thing, guys. We're going to put a beat down on him to stun him, and then we're going to use him to beat up Dowdy Munna, who's the other guy. And this guy's almost nearly dead, and there's the stun because he's low life. And here is the obligatory rodeo. So from here, I don't know how much damage this is going to do to this guy, but it's probably a lot. Yeah, look at those chunks. Big chunks. I should use the heavy attack, because he's getting close to dying. There you go, big heavy attack. And then all it's going to take is, you know, 1 or 2 hits, 1 or 2 combos, and then we'll be able to finish off the final dude. There is a fella just in front of me, a Draugr, and he's doing his spin to win move, because he's clearly played Bloodborne. He started with the axe, didn't he? You can tell. But that's the end of you, sir. So I always find it interesting when a phase like this turns up, because to look at it, it's an intimidating phase, right? 2 giant boss tier enemies. But then it's the easiest phase in all of those phases, because they're really easy to beat. It's like embarrassing how easy that phase is. It's the final phase, it's the most intimidating phase, and it's the phase that the average gamer would probably say is the scariest, but it isn't, because it's profoundly easy to micromanage. And then there you go, guys. That is the end of the Between the Realms Gauntlet. That is the equivalent of perhaps the Loom Chamber from God of War 2, or the clones from God of War 1, or maybe there's a big fight is it in Pandora's Box in God of War 3, that massive fight against tons of enemies that's really, really an endurance test. This is probably the closest to that, like the Trial of Archimedes that the new God of War has, but it's checkpointed between every wave, and the only two tough waves is one which is a double boss fight against a bitchy boss, and then a bunch of enemies that just take a massive beating and are very difficult to interrupt. So in the grand scheme of things, nowhere near as difficult as those old games. Which is quite funny, because on GameFAQs I've seen a lot of people saying that this game is way harder than the old games. And in some ways it is, because you're not quite as capable in this game as we go towards the world serpent's gaping maw. And then now we're magically inside him, thanks to the joys of editing. But I would disagree. I think God of War on the hardest difficulty, especially if you do any kind of restriction run, can be very challenging. Not all the fights. 90% of the fights are generally quite simple. Spam grab, you know, Bloom of Prometheus, block everything. But there are some that really, really know how to kick you in the dick. There are some fights that make up for the rest of the game's ease of use. There are fights that will take you longer than anything in this game, in my opinion. I think, anyway. Maybe you're way better at God of War OG games and not very good at this one, and that's where that opinion comes from. Because when I first played this game, guys, I thought this game was incredibly difficult. I thought it was one of the hardest difficulties I'd ever played. And that's 100% honest. I really did. I thought this difficulty was that hard. I no longer do. For two reasons. The first one is they patched the tits off it to make it much more enjoyable and much less grindy. And then the second one is I understood how to freeze enemies and knock them off. Once I did that, it completely mitigated a lot of the tankiness that I hated. And I understood the fundamentals of how to do more damage. It didn't feel as number driven as it did on my first playthrough. If anybody watched the stream of my first playthrough, you'll know that I had a really difficult time, and at that moment the game felt incredibly tough. But post walkthrough, the game is not that difficult at all to me now, and I've improved a lot as a player. The game itself has improved a lot as far as making it enjoyable and not just insufferable, and the combination of the two has led to my opinion changing a lot. So the statement that I made in that very first video is now a different statement that I would make now. And it's literally because it is easier. As I die randomly from something. You see, that's the stuff you don't hear in the commentaries normally. When my throat randomly gets drier than a desert and I can't speak. Because traditionally I stop it, delete that part, and then re-say it and continue the commentary. But the way that I've been doing my commentary on the most recent version of Premiere is a bit of a pain. And you might wonder why I don't do it the way I used to do it. It's because the way this new Premiere works, not only does it have a tendency of crashing, which is really bad, but additionally, I haven't found a convincing way to mute myself when I'm commentating. And do you really want to hear yourself in your headphones when you're talking to yourself? It's the fucking weirdest thing. Just can't do it. And I've tried muting things and changing things. It's something I have to fix because it's terrible. Thank you for watching. You take care now.